everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today we're talking about Philip K. Dick's The Skull. This was a very interesting read for me. First off, it's the longest one so far, which is cool. And it's the first one that I might have been able to guess it was Philip K. Dick if I started reading it without knowing that it was him. So that's really interesting. I feel like we're starting to see the Philip K. Dick that we kind of know from his later works. This isn't like his peak or anything like that. I'm just saying you can kind of start to tell, which is really cool. So that made the story a lot of fun. One of the indications that I had was it jumped a lot. There's something that they do with the spacing between paragraphs in this story, in this specific version. I don't know if it's going to be in all versions of the story. I hope it is. But what they do is in between paragraphs that basically take you to another scene, there's more of a space. So, and that did not happen in the earlier stories. The earlier stories just go A, B, C, D, they just move along. But this story, they kind of felt the need to give you a visual cue that something was changing. Because you'd be reading along, like it opens with him in a room. He literally says in a room, talking to a group of people. And they're discussing his ability to get parole. I'll go into the story in just a minute. And then it says the car stopped. Right? Now, it's a new paragraph, and there is that little space to kind of help you understand that this jarring transition is kind of supposed to be there. That's supposed to happen, and the story is full of it. Like, there's a point where the guy's like, we'll show you how to use the gun in just a minute. And then the guy gets in the time machine and leaves. Right? They never showed him, but he knows. And when he's in the past, he's like, we took a lot of time working on my wallet and the documents inside. And it's like, when? But it doesn't matter because they're the publishers, and Philip K. Dick, I would assume, are helping you along by giving you that little visual cue that you're kind of jumping from plot point to plot point. So that was very interesting. It's a very cool story. I'll just give you a quick rundown. So it starts off, a prisoner is being, I guess, just spoken to. Somebody's literally offering him a deal and saying, look, we know that you were a hunter on Mars. You would hunt wild game on Mars, and you would take the pelts, and these illegal pelts, hunting on Mars is illegal. You would take these illegal pelts, and you would sell them, and you made a ton of money, but then you got caught, and you went to jail. But we have a job for you. And he says, just skip all this. Who do you want me to kill? Right? Which is kind of cool. So then they take him to a church. And it's kind of confusing because they break into the church, but they don't explain it that way. They show up, and there's a couple guards on the steps, and the guards open the door and they go in. But that's breaking in. And there's guards inside, but those guards are with our antagonist and our protagonist, right? So they break into the church, and the speaker is what they call the person who's offering the deal. The speaker explains that the church got started 200 years ago in 1960 in Colorado. And this church has declared that there should not be any wars or any violence. And the way that they make sure that there's no wars and no violence is they don't support any scientific advancement except for medicine. So they can't build weapons. The state, the country can't build weapons, and they can't have an army, right? This church has become so powerful that it has stifled war. War doesn't happen. And our criminal says, well, isn't that a good thing? No, war's a good thing. And the guy explains, no, that's a bad thing because, as Darwin has explained, it means that our population, all of our population, is just allowed to live. We need war to kill off the stupid people, which is horrible, right? I mean, that's just a terrible, terrible thing because, I mean, I'd be dead, right? If there was a war and people were being drafted back in the 80s, I probably would have gone, I'm sure. You know, I mean, it's not, that's just terrible. The solution to people not fully understanding politics and science and all that kind of stuff is not to kill them, right? The solution is to educate them. And no matter how much kicking and screaming we do, education is the key to success. Okay? So, that's the reason they want to have war back, is because they want to kill off most of their population who don't believe in war. Try not to get sidetracked on that. So, the speaker explains that the person who started this religion died 200 years ago, but people have seen them since. So they believe he's still alive, and they want this guy to kill him. And they say the only way you're going to be able to tell if you have the right guy or not is by the skull. So they go into the back room of this church. They find these bones in this special little hidden room. They take all the bones and they all leave. They go to their secret base. The military has the bones laid out on the table. And the guy explains, you're going to take that skull. You're going to get in that time machine. You're going to go back in time, figure out who this guy is, and you're going to kill him. And don't try anything stupid like trying to run, because we control the cage. We'll just bring it right back. We control the time machine. We'll just bring you right back here. He says, okay, I'll do it. So he takes the skull. He gets in the time machine. It's this weird crystal cage, apparently. He gets in it. He hits a few buttons, and he goes back to 1961. And in 1961, he scours through a bunch of newspapers. He has a bit of a hard time because 200 years have gone by. His clothes don't match. And he has this crazy accent, and he uses weird words. And, of course, people talking to him have crazy accents and use weird words as well. You know, he's having a hard time communicating. But he does figure out when and where the person got arrested that he's looking for. Because the person, the religious leader, only spoke one time, and it was very short. And right after he spoke, the police grabbed him, took him to prison, and I think he hung himself in prison. I think that's what the guy reads in the newspaper, is that the prisoner hung himself in prison, that he committed suicide. I'm not sure if that's how it went down, but I think that's what it is from the newspaper. So he knows where that one speech was given before the police jumped on him. So all he has to do is go back in time a little bit further to that location and wait for that person to show up so he can kill him before he does that one quick speech. While he's here getting the newspapers, he runs into a woman that has a bunch of packages, and the woman freaks out. Now, he doesn't know why she's freaking out. Could be the clothes, could be his accent, who knows? But she flips out and she starts running after him. And he takes off, and another guy joins her and starts running after as well. But he does lose them. So he gets away from there. He jumps in the time machine. He goes back a tiny bit further to this town, and he realizes he just needs to get a hotel room, kind of lay low, and wait for this weird stranger to show up. So after a lot of back and forth, he finally is able to secure a hotel room. This was first published, I'm doing this out of order, I apologize. This was a lot more complex, which is good, right? This is Philip K. Dick. It was published in 52. Okay, so we're still going in order. This is 1952. I think the last story was 51, so it's just the next year he got this story published. So McCarthyism and the fear of communism and all that stuff is bubbling, right? The Cold War is going, and in 52. So the character in 60, which is in the future, right? The character in 1960, he has a full beard. He's not clean shaven. And he has weird clothes on, and he has this weird accent. And people are kind of worried that he might be a communist. So he talks to this innkeeper for a little bit, saying, I just need a room. I'm from Oregon. I know I have a weird accent. There's nothing wrong with my clothes. And eventually he ends up just saying, maybe I should just go somewhere else because clearly you guys don't want me. And they're like, no, you can totally stay here, right? So they let him get a room. He goes upstairs, gets his room, and then he just starts looking for the stranger. And while he's looking for the stranger, he runs into this group of kids. There's a female and a couple males. They're still in high school. I think they literally say that they're 16, right? They're kids. But he becomes enamored with the female, right? And he starts talking about, I wonder if she's, I can't remember the exact words they used, but he's got different words for like married or dating. It's like pre-marriage and then post-marriage and true marriage and different cultural stuff that has happened in the United States over the 200 years that have gone by to his time, which is interesting, weird stuff, right? It's a little freaky, and I know it's 1952, right? That's the thing we constantly have to remind ourselves. It's a little freaky that he points out that she's 16 and still has his character. I mean, other people in the town call them children because they are, right? They're kids. But he's kind of enamored with her. So he ends up going into a fountain soda shop because it was written in 52, right? So he goes into this fountain shop and she's there. And he sits down next to her and they kind of start talking back and forth. And she talks about how most people in town don't like him because he's so weird. But she kind of likes him, you know. She doesn't feel the same way the rest of the town does. But then her boyfriend comes in, and he gets super pissed. He's also one of the high school students. He gets super pissed and kind of starts to threaten the guy. So our criminal, our lead character, activates a device in his suit that paralyzes everyone in the room and knocks them unconscious. And he leaves. So then, that night, the sheriff comes and finds him and says, something weird happened in the fountain shop. Tell me what happened. And he says, oh, my lighter exploded. The liquid was leaking, and when I lit it, it just blew up. And he says, but everybody went unconscious. And he said, well, it must have been the fumes. And the sheriff's like, okay, fine, you can go. And he lets him go. So then he realizes that tonight is the night that the person is going to speak. The dates are different in the future. Apparently, between each month, there's a quarter month. So he was there on November 30th. He thought he would go into the quarter month before December started. But he didn't realize that the next day is December 1st. So he's like, oh my gosh, today's the day. So he goes straight to the place where the speech is going to happen and where the guy gets arrested. And he's waiting there, and the girl shows up with her uncle, I think, in a truck. Her uncle's a plumber, I guess, and they come up in a truck together, and she says, I gotta warn you. I have no idea how she knew that he was going to be there or whatever. There's lots of skips in this thing. It's really wild. You need to get out of here because all the cops in the county are coming to arrest you tonight. There's like 60 cop cars, and they're on their way. Apparently, of course, the sheriff didn't trust the response that he gave about his lighter. So he decided that this guy's a communist, and he's called all the police in the area to come down to arrest him. And I guess they're all coming to the field. I don't know how everybody knows he's in the field, but everybody knows he's there. In fact, townspeople start walking toward the field to watch what's going to happen. They know this person is probably going to put up a fight and get shot as a communist, so they want to see it. So townspeople are coming, a bunch of cops are coming, and he goes back into his time machine. He could leave. He could just go. He goes back into his time machine. He gave a really neat speech before the girl showed up about how different people would react. He's sitting there holding the guy's skull. And he's saying, this guy did this really weird thing where he started this whole political movement and got himself killed. I wonder if he would have made the same decision if he could have looked at his own skull. Then the girl shows up. All of that stuff happens. The town people are coming. The cops are coming. He goes back inside and he pulls out the skull again to look at it. And in that moment, he realizes he is the person that he's waiting for. There's something with a tooth on the left side. He holds it up and he looks in a mirror. Apparently there's a mirror in the time machine. I have no idea why. Holds it up. He looks in the mirror. He realizes his tooth is the same. He realizes this is his skull. He's looking at his own skull. And he also realizes that the people that he ran into when he was 1 year earlier or later, 1 year later, that really freaked out and chased him are the people who realized he was still alive. Of course, he's not still alive. He was just a time traveler going backwards, right? So he realizes that he is going to live on. You know, he can go back. I mean, he could kill everyone there. He explains about his gun, which we'll get to in just a sec. He could kill everyone there and just go back and the church would never start. Or he could choose to go through with this, be the guy, start that church, and then be born in 200 years to be a fur trapper on Mars. Right? And he chooses the latter, looking at that skull. He says, well, I'm just going to do it. So he goes out, and the whole crowd is like, what are you going to do? Are you going to throw a bomb? You're going to throw a bomb? And he's like, no, I don't have any bombs, which confuses them a little because they really believe that a bomb went off in the fountain shop instead of him just activating his suit to make everybody pass out. And he explains, I do have a gun, and I could kill every person here, but I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to use that gun. I only have one thing to say, and the cops have shown up now. Everybody's listening to him. And he says, people who take lives die, and people who kill die. But people who give their life are reborn. And then the cops arrest him for being a communist. They take him to prison, and it ends. Now, this was fun. This is a good, weird story, and I'm sure I did a crappy job of explaining it. It's obviously much better if you just read the thing, right? I hope you guys are reading these, because it's super fun. I, of course, figured out very quickly that he's the same guy, right? I think everybody did, even in me describing it. I'm sure about halfway through, everybody was like, dude, he's the guy, right? But once again, I don't know if it's because it's what, 70 years later, right? I mean, this is an old story. 70 years ago, I don't know. And I'm sure there'll be, I love, by the way, the comments that you guys are leaving about what about this story? What about this story? Please keep doing that. It's incredible. Just today, my brother and I were talking. He's like, dude, I went into this shop and I found this book of, I forgot what it was called, but it's from the Matrix video that we did, where somebody said, actually, the Matrix was in 1930 or no, 1890 or something. From this guy, he found that book. He's going to read it, and we're going to make a video, right? So please keep, like I love seeing these other stories. So tell me what other time travel stories there were where a person turned out to be the person that they thought they were going to stop or whatever. You know what I mean? But I, of course, instantly thought of 12 Monkeys or other. There's lots of stories now where people go back in time and then realize that they're part of the problem. You know, they're not the solution. They're actually causing the problem. It's very common all through Star Trek and stuff like that. I don't want to name too many specific things because if I get confused, then I'm going to have to go back and look. I did it with the Outer Limits on a previous one somebody pointed out, which I'm very thankful for as well. Right? I want to be knowledgeable about this stuff. But this was tons of fun. I highly recommend it. I'd give this a 9 easy. I think it's a great little story. It is predictable. It's predictable, I think, because of the time that we live in versus when it was written. I don't think it was that predictable back then. I think it was kind of mind-blowing. And the way it's structured, it goes in order, right? But those gaps, like you'll just be reading and be like, what the? And you'll have to go back and realize, oh, something big happened in here, which you didn't bother to tell me. We're moving on. Okay. You know, but it's very fun. I do recommend it. Please do grab a copy of this and read it along with me. I'm going to keep going, of course. I mean, it's a blast, and they're short and they're fun. It's really good. And if you like this, hit the like button. And if you want to see more like this, subscribe because there's tons more coming. And thanks so much for watching.